Hello, everyone, and my name is Michael, and I am a pacer. I was told to restrict my movement to the red dot here, and I will do my level best, but hey, no promises. So, what is my talk about today? My talk is about Breaking Biz 101. Don't worry, Breaking Biz, Breaking Bad. I will not be talking about meth labs, I promise. I will restrict myself to talking about entrepreneurship. This is what I do. And I will be using my own startup, Eatigo, as a case study for many of the things I tell you about. What is Eatigo? Eatigo is the #1 restaurant commerce platform in Southeast Asia. What does that mean? We have 4,500 restaurants on our platforms. You may think 4,500 restaurants, that doesn't sound like a whole lot. Maybe that's not a very impressive number. But if I tell you that we have 4,500 restaurants, all of which are discounted all day, all of which are discounted every day, and every last one of which offers 50% off at one part in the day, this makes for an inventory that is an absolute unique inventory globally. Nobody else offers this in no other market, not in China, not in India, not in America, nowhere. So we are a global first mover in that which we do. We have about 1 million diners that we seat every single month. So we're not TikTok, I'm sorry, but we are not nobody either. We are somewhere in the middle. We have over 5 million downloads, so we are reasonably sized. And we have raised so far about $25 million against a valuation that is well north of $100 million. This gap is important because if you remember when Grab made their SPAC a couple years back, I think they had raised a total of $5 billion. And their valuation was $5 billion. So you ask yourself, what are they doing? Right? My son is 16, he can do that. Right? I give you $5 billion, can you make it worth $5 billion? Hell yeah, everybody can do that. We raised $25 million, we're worth over $100 million. This value add, this is what the entrepreneur does. This is capital well deployed, capital sensibly deployed, and that's where we create excess value. We are in 6 markets. At the moment, we're in Thailand, in Hong Kong, in Singapore, in Malaysia, in the Philippines, and in Taiwan. Actually, we are not in Taiwan yet. We will launch in Taiwan, I think on February 17th. So you are the first people to actually hear this. So if you ever become an entrepreneur and you're a listed company, don't make a habit of announcing new launches in TED Talks, right? Your investors probably don't think that's really great, but we're not listed yet, so we can do that. Okay, at the start line. What I will talk about today cannot be a playbook on how to become an entrepreneur. We simply do not have time for that. The talk needs to be aspective rather than exhaustive, but I hope I can give you a couple of nuggets, food for thought, to get your gray matter rolling to think, hey, entrepreneurism, is that something that could be for me? Is that something that I find interesting? Or maybe you come out of this and say like, boy, this sounds horrible, right? I want to stay far away from this. And then that's great too, because then you know that this is not for you, right? So it's just a couple of nuggets to guide your thinking. What are the things that you have to deal with if you are an entrepreneur? What are the things, the kind of decisions that you have to make? First one I want to talk about is co-founders. And I use the plural on purpose because in Eatigo, we are 4 co-founders. We have myself, a gentleman from India, Siddhant, a lady from Singapore, Judy, and another co-founder, Louis, from Thailand. So we are quite multicultural, diverse group of founders. 3 of the 4 co-founders know each other for over 10 years before we founded the company together. And I think that's very important. Because if you're an entrepreneur, chances are that you have a big ego. And if you found with different people together, chances are you're going to fight. And us as a co-founder group share one characteristic that I think is very important, and that's the ability to fight without breaking up. That's a good ability to have, whether you're in a romantic relationship or in a business relationship, right? Think about it. The ability to fight without breaking up. It's a big risk with startups. Two big egos clash, one walks away. What happens? Now, I'm sure you know there's lots of startups that have only a single co-founder. And, you may think, why the need to bring in other people? And I tell you, it has something to do with whether I think, or why I think, that founding your own company is a great idea. There's a Japanese saying that says, if you never climb up Mount Fuji, you're a fool. But if you climb up 2 times, you're an even bigger fool. This is how I feel about entrepreneurism, right? If you ask me, was this a good idea? Is this something you enjoyed that you did? I think it's the best thing that ever happened to me professionally. I don't have to convince people what is the right thing to do. I know what the right thing to do is, and I can do it when I want to do it. You're fully in control. It's incredibly empowering. It's incredibly liberating. It's great. So, should we all become entrepreneurs? No, because it's not for the faint of heart. Right? It's also full of anxiety, of stress, and I can tell you in a situation like COVID in particular, I was very happy that I had people to share the load with. So having several people to carry the load with, to people with different qualifications, different backgrounds, is a very useful thing. So I would strongly recommend finding co-founders to work with if you want to build your own startup, and I would strongly recommend not making a startup with somebody you just met, but to try to find somebody that you've known for a while and where you think you can fight without breaking up. Next thing, you need an insight to make a new company. There's 3 reasons a company can come into existence. Either you do something cheaper than everybody else, you do it better than everybody else, or you do something that nobody else has ever done before. Doing something cheaper than others is like Lenskart, right? The guys make glasses, and they do a great job in this in India and in other countries. Or you could be somebody like Oracle or SAP, who just creates software that does things much better than what smaller software companies can do. Or you can be like Facebook or TikTok and do something that hasn't been done before. I firmly prefer the road of innovation. I think it's more interesting, and if you're going to innovate, I think you should not start with an idea, you should start with a problem. And you should find a problem, something that is broken, something that needs fixing, but it's not enough to find something that needs fixing. You also need to make sure that there will be somebody who pays for your fix. I don't know if you remember the time before Spotify and iTunes, there was a company called Napster. Napster basically was a platform where people could illegally pirate and download MP3s, songs. And at one point, this was one of the most talked about platforms in the world. They had found a problem. They had a great solution. Everybody loved it, but nobody wanted to pay for the solution. And they drowned in litigation because obviously this was illegal, and so the company died. Right? It's important that you find a problem that is worth solving and that has a solution that somebody is willing to pay for. What is the insight that Eatigo has? The insight that Eatigo has is that an empty table is essentially a perishable good. If you take econ or business, you might have heard that concept of a perishable good. And industries that deal with perishable goods are, for example, airline industry and or car rental industries and hotel industries. And what I learned when I investigated these industries is that they have absolutely terrible capacity utilization. Restaurants. Right. Other industries do really well in this, right? You can see airlines and hotels, they run at 70 to 80% capacity utilization, whereas restaurants only run at about 30-35% capacity utilization. Why are restaurants so bad at capacity utilization? Is because of the distribution of demand across the day. We don't eat 5 times, 6 times, 7 times a day. Most people eat twice a day. And that means the demand distribution around the restaurant is a 2-peak curve, which goes nothing, nothing, lunch, nothing, nothing, dinner, nothing, nothing. That means many parts of the day, a restaurant is empty. That is not efficient. And this is where Eatigo comes in and drives traffic at times where other restaurants cannot do this. The way we do this is by changing the price point at different times. And so we essentially charge different people a different price at different times for the exact same product. In a pre-woke society, this was called price discrimination. This is a no-no, this is a bad word. We don't want to discriminate today, so we don't call this price discrimination anymore. You can see this is an old slide. I still call this price discrimination. Today, we have a beautiful euphemism for this, and we call this dynamic pricing. Same thing, right? Charging different people a different price for the same product. It's very normal in airline tickets. It's very normal in hotel prices. The room prices change all the time. Ticket prices change all the time. Restaurant prices are fixed. This is why they're inefficient, and this is where we come in. This is what makes us unique and why we can charge 3 to 4 times per diner what any other reservation platform in the market can charge. I always say they're in the business of fishing. We're in the business of magic. Well, I'm a Christian. I don't say magic. I say miracles. But essentially, that's the difference. If you think at companies like, I don't know, OpenRice in Hong Kong or OpenTable in America, they aggregate traffic that would come anyways and push it to the restaurant exactly when these people would come anyways, which is, of course, in peak times. Eatigo sends over 90% of their customers to the merchant in off-peak times. We can shape traffic. We can flatten the curve, another bad and loaded term today, right, post-COVID, but that is what we do. We take traffic from peak hours that would otherwise not come and shift it to restaurants through the discounts that we provide. And that makes the restaurant more profitable because they can cover seats that they would otherwise not cover. Okay, elevator pitch. I don't know if you've heard this. The elevator pitch is the ability to condense your idea of a business into 5 to 15 seconds. If you were to meet an investor in an elevator and you had 15 seconds to get him interested in what you're selling. If you cannot condense your idea in 5 seconds, 10 seconds, it means you haven't thought about it enough, right? Many people do elevator pitches along the lines like, we are the Uber of X, or we're the this of that. This works if you're not an innovator and if you're really just doing a transfer job. If you're doing something really innovative, this doesn't work. You need to come up with your own pitch. The elevator pitch of Eatigo is this. We connect empty stomachs with empty tables to a system of dynamic pricing. This has worked really well for me because every time I tell people, that's what I do. I'm in the business of connecting empty stomachs with empty tables. I get, how do you do that? And that's all I need. That's my elevator pitch. This is permission marketing. Now I'm having you interested. Now I have your permission to tell you more about my program, more about my product, and off we go. That's an elevator pitch. So, food for thought. A couple of things that I think you need to think about if you're considering, becoming an entrepreneur. The first thing is, when do you want to become an entrepreneur? I call this the experience and opportunity cost conundrum. So should you become an entrepreneur straight out of uni, or maybe even before, or when you're later in life and you're more experienced? Like, the problem is, if you're very young and you're an entrepreneur, your cost and opportunity is very low because you don't earn a high salary yet, and you can blow 2 or 3 startups and it will not, eat up too much of your life's earnings. The problem is you don't know anything yet and you're very likely to fail. If you become an entrepreneur later in life, your likelihood of failing drops down significantly. The problem is now your opportunity cost is very high because you have already a significant salary. And if you, forgo that salary for 5, 10 years and then you don't get a good exit, well, that's going to hurt a lot, right? I chose the second way, right? I became a startup founder when I was in my late 30s. And my takeaway is, and my recommendation to you is, do it earlier. Do it earlier because it's much easier to find a mentor who knows the stuff that you don't know than it is to find an investor who will pay you a proper salary if you're already more experienced. So I would say definitely go early. I don't know if we still have time for this, but it's a matrix of what's important to you, right? Between payout and passion and pragmatism. And if you're an entrepreneur, you have to be passionate. It's going to be it's not going to be an 8-hour job, right? It's going to be a 16-hour job per day or more than this. So you need the same passion that a nurse or a teacher requires, but you're probably looking for a higher payout in that, right? But you need the passion. So you're probably very different from a, say, banker or stock trader. Different kinds of traits that going to define your success as an entrepreneur. Right? I call this courage, vision, and realism. If you have courage and vision, but no realism, you will be a failed entrepreneur. If you are unable to go through data and you are not able to not be in love with your own ideas, chances are this is not going to work. If you are very realistic, but you have neither courage nor vision, you won't be an entrepreneur, right? Because you say, that is terribly risky. Why would I ever do such a thing? And you won't be an entrepreneur. If you can have courage, vision, and realism, you just might succeed as an entrepreneur. You need those three traits if you want to be a successful entrepreneur, I believe. Breaking out of the Shark Tank. I don't know if you guys watch Shark Tank, the TV program. I think it's a terrible show because I see young entrepreneurs full of passion, full of great ideas that don't have any money, and they have to give away a huge chunk of their business to mean rich people who have the money, right? That seems like a terrible deal. And as an entrepreneur, you face this situation always. You want money because you need money to operate your business, and you need to give away a big part of your business. I can say that, 10, 12 years into Eatigo, I still own a very large chunk of my business because I didn't have to do this, and I don't like to do this. And the only way to get out of this rat circle where you have to raise money because you don't have money and you have less and less and less and less of your company is to have positive unit economics, right? So again, for the econ students, business students, you will probably have heard this. In short, I'm going to sum this up as make sure that your LTV is bigger than your CAC. That sounds terrible, right? So what am I talking about here? LTV is the lifetime value of your customers. The CAC is the customer acquisition cost. And what is really important when you're building a business, whether it is a little Apple shop that sells apples or if it's a big startup, is that however much it costs you to acquire a new user should be less than the money that this user will make you in their lifetime. It's very normal that you start with a very high customer acquisition cost and very low lifetime value because people don't know you yet. And then over time, these two gradients should cross each other, and once your LTV is bigger than your CAC, you're good. You made it. You have a business that is sustainable, and you will get a liquidity event on this for sure. The problem starts when your CAC at one point, doesn't drop anymore, and your LTV doesn't grow anymore, and these two gradients have never touched. Then you're in trouble, and you need to find a solution for this because otherwise your business will die. Last thing I'm going to leave you with is a word on hiring. It's a tough word, I will admit, right? And I always say, you can hire Tim Cooks, but you cannot hire Steve Jobses, right? That means if you're looking for vision, if you're looking for ideas, you cannot outsource this if you're an entrepreneur. If you don't have these yourself, don't become an entrepreneur. You have to be Steve Jobs. On the other hand, operational excellence, right? The Tim Cooks of this world is a readily available skill in the market. Many people are good at operating businesses. All you need is a good head on your shoulders, a bit of discipline, and being organized. You can hire this kind of people. Now, we all want to hire A players, but there's a real problem that if you are a new startup, nobody knows you. No A player will want to work for you, and no A player will command a salary that you can actually pay. So you cannot hire A players at the beginning of your entrepreneurial journey. That forces you into something pretty tough. You will have to hire B players? No. C players? No. If you start out, you're hiring D players. Not because they're the best, you know they're D players, but because that's all you can afford, and that's the only people that will work for you. So you hire them, and you work with them, and you take the business from 0 to 1. And then you fire them. And you hire B players. No, C players probably, right? Because that's the only people you can afford now. And then you build the business again. And then you fire these people. And then you do it all over again until you are able to afford A players. That you can pay their salary and that you're famous enough that they actually want to work for you. This is tough, right? This doesn't sound very nice But this is the reality if you want to be an entrepreneur, if you want to build a business. It's the only way you can attract that kind of talent. So, this is a little bit, in a nutshell, a couple of nuggets, food for thought. What do you need to think about if you want to be an entrepreneur? A couple of the uncomfortable decisions that you will have to take. A little peek in the anxiety, the breaking out of the Shark Tank. How do I make my business profitable? And, it's my hope that it will give you some food for thought. And maybe you'll come away and say, this sounds challenging, this sounds fun, this is something I want to do. Great. And maybe you come away from this and say, that sounds absolutely horrible. That doesn't sound anything like what I imagine Mark Zuckerberg is doing all day, right? Then maybe this is not for you. If you think this is for you, and you have an actual great business idea at one point, feel free to reach out to me, right? You can find me on LinkedIn. This is the Grown-Ups People's Instagram, right? And I'm readily available there. And if you want to pitch me an idea and get my 2 cents on your idea, my 2 cents are free. Thank you for your attention. Have a great day. Bye-bye.